Hi, I'm Catherine.
And I'm Gail, and welcome to Women Over 70, Aging Reimagined, our award-winning weekly podcast. Visit womenover70.com to learn about how you may become involved. And join Aging Reimagined Circle to enjoy free participation in our online monthly programs. Thank you for listening.
Today, we're delighted to be talking with Elizabeth White. Now, in March of 2022, at the age of 68, Elizabeth White joined the Ideas 42 Venture Studio as an entrepreneur in residence. She was pioneering co-living housing solutions for older adults aging alone on moderate incomes. And as a result, she is the founder of NUUageColiving. Elizabeth's inspiration for New Age, and I'm quoting her, grew out of my own experience with long-term underemployment and economic hardship, which she wrote about in her book, 55, Underemployed and Faking Normal. Elizabeth says she wrote this book, again, quote, as a 62-year-old Black woman who has lived the stories she describes, and as a Harvard MBA, former retail entrepreneur, and C-suite executive who never expected to land among the unemployed. Elizabeth is a regular contributor to blogs, and she's a featured speaker at conferences and workshops. Her TEDx talk has been elevated to main TED stage with over 2 million views. And she's a board member of the International Federation on Aging and has testified before the Senate Special Committee on Aging. So, welcome, Elizabeth, as an advocate for women aging. And we thank Mark Blessoff, facilitator of Courageous Online Conscious Aging Workshops, for referring you to us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just thrilled to be here. And I love this topic of women over 70 because it's different than over 60 and over 50. So I was very, intrigued that you have sliced this demographic for a podcast because I think it's much needed. So
Thank you. Thank you. Well, let's begin with your creation of New Age. What is it? Why is it needed? Who's it for? How is it different from other housing models?
So let me go back a little bit to Ideas 42, which you mentioned. So Ideas 42 was a venture studio. My friendships span all ages. So a younger friend told me about this. And I'm thinking, I'm 68, venture studio, didn't really resonate. She said, apply anyway. So when I applied, there were 4 rounds of interviews. When I was told I made it from the second to the 3rd round, I then got serious. I said, I straightened out my tie, applied, got in, and was one of 5, pretty much at 68, double the age of almost everybody in there. So that right there was an interesting place to be. Sometimes I felt like Grandma Moses in there. What their mission was, you didn't have to come in with an idea. They sort of looked at your track record, and then the question that they posed to us, given what you're working on, and I had been working on retirement insecurity and older adults who suddenly find themselves unemployed, who've sort of done everything right and are suddenly long-term unemployed in their 50s and beyond. And I had had the opportunity to go around the country speaking. And what I heard all the time was, I can make it if I have my housing together. If I have my housing, I can extreme coupon it the rest of the way. So I'm in Washington, D.C., and in a lot of cities now you see co-living, but it's generally for younger people, nomads, students. And I had wondered, could there be co-living for older adults? Could that address loneliness and isolation issues? Could it address some of the financial vulnerability issues? Because housing is typically our biggest household expense. If you were to do smaller spaces, have women primarily, though I do hear from men as well, but women I hear from most, living together, Golden Girl style, and what would that need to look like? So with the studio, I then had resources to hire an architect. I had resources to start to go to conferences. I had resources to bring on a woman who knew a lot about shared living and how that would work. And so to begin to hone down and begin crystallize what it was that I was thinking about. And the reasons for it are, as I stated, there are a lot of not just women who are facing financial precarity for the first time. And the reasons for that are many. One, we're just living longer. You know, when the Social Security first came into being in 1935, I think life expectancy was something like 70. So if you retired at 65, you had 5 years to put together. Now, if you make it to 60 in reasonably good health, you could live 25, 30 years. So that's a lot of money you have to have set aside to fund all of those years. It's no longer, you know, you do a little fishing, kiss your grandkids, and that's it. You now have decades that you might need to support yourself. Many Americans no longer have pensions. So it's on you to have set aside the $1 million+ dollars. And lots of Americans, middle class Americans, have not done it. Sort of the median retirement savings, 55 to 64, something like $60,000. So there's a lot of pressure. Women, we also live longer. So we're funding even more years than men are funding. And then when you look at wage disparity, and you look at what the wage disparity in and out of the job market, what that means to the kind of Social Security benefit we're going to get, what that means to whether or not we got pensions, all of that, the sort of gendered ageism comes together and leaves women in a very vulnerable position. So I am a woman, have friends who are in various states affected by these various things that I'm talking about. And after I wrote the book, I started to hear from people all over the country, why isn't there a conversation about this? Because there's a lot of shame, you know, we're very quick to blame and shame and finger point. You know, why didn't you save more? Why weren't you more responsible? When you have this impacting so many people, it starts to be bad policy, not bad character. So when I was asked what did I want to work on, this was the issue that I thought I could make a contribution on.
And what stage are you in now? What stage is the company in?
So we're now, we have been approached by a developer who has a few houses that he wants to work with us in doing a couple of tests. One is outside of Dallas, one outside of Indianapolis, to get a sense of how do we build community in this co-living environment. So I will, over the next few weeks, be inviting people who would like to work with us in testing, you know, what should the tech stack look like in there? How do you onboard people? What kind of issues come up in terms of conflict with older women that might not come up with younger women? So all of that is what we, because I'm not going to be sort of the builder. I want to work with a builder, but what I'm bringing is I know a lot about this market, a lot of what is needed in terms of how to make it successful, what the architecture should look like, given what I'm hearing from people who are interested in shared living.
When I looked at your website, it looks like there's each person would have his or her own private quarters, and then there's the communal rooms, not just, I think it's multiple rooms. It looks so inviting on the. So is that's the vision? That's what you and the architect have in mind?
And we've sort of grown even from there, because originally the thinking was each of the quarters would be identical. And here's what we started to hear, and it's true even in my own friendship circle. Not everybody has the same health status now. Not everybody has the same financial means now, but we're all really good friends. So it made me think about, do all the quarters have to be exactly the same? The friend who has more means but would like to live with the friends that she's had for decades doesn't want to be reduced down to something that she's not comfortable in. But could you build something where there are more models than just one model? I have a friend now, whenever we go to a restaurant, if there's sort of a rooftop dining, she wants to know, is there an elevator? She doesn't care how nice the view is. If there's no elevator, at this point, she's not going, and she's younger than me. So we have, it's all these different financial status, health status that I think needs to be taken into account when you're bringing older women together. And when I was originally we thought everything should be the same. So that's one thing we've learned interacting with women and getting feedback. And that's something that we would change.
Are these going to be women only, or are you?
They will not be. I say women because that's who
we're talking about, right?
Or been right here from.
Is there any relationship, Elizabeth, between the International Federation on Aging or the input you're getting?
Yeah, totally.
Are these what are called NDUs?
So when I think of ADUs, I think of a self-contained tiny house, sort of in the 350, I think. Though actually, what was it? Cisco, they could go up to 1,000 square feet, which to me seems sort of big. But, generally 350, 400, 500 square feet. But I see them as sort of contained. This I'm looking at in a multifamily building where we would get 1 or 2 or 3 floors. We also, though, to your point, Gail, have been talking about models where you have different kinds of houses around a compound. And in that way, what I was talking about earlier, the friend who has more means or the friend who needs a different kind of accessibility could be together, and then there's something in the middle where people could gather, or maybe there's a communal kitchen. You'd have your own maybe heating kitchen, but you could go to the communal kitchen for shared meals. So these are the things we're talking about, and we're really getting feedback from people who are interested in shared living, and there are a lot of people who are.
How are you going to make this affordable? What's affordable?
So we're looking at from sort of $900 a month to $1,200 a month is what were the numbers we were playing with the models. Mm-hmm. Now these are not big. Then that in what you're in the design you saw, the one that that I'm describing, where there would be different sizes for different people. There definitely, even in my own friendship circle, there are women who can definitely pay market. And then there are women who cannot pay market, but we're all friends.
Mm-hmm. Would this be Section 8 housing, or would it be? No, it wouldn't be. Strictly privately owned development. Okay. Yeah. So all of it would be affordable housing, or you'd have a range. Or
The second model that we were describing, where there are people who can afford market, could pay market, but and I had even talked to people about where some of the market subsidizes some of the other housing to make it more affordable. That's not a new model that is out there as well.
Well, I have two women who are ready to sign up if you can get to Chicago. Not us, but two other women.
okay.
So, Elizabeth, let's go back a bit. And what would you like our listeners to know about your own background and some of the hardships that you've dealt with that have inspired you to have this mission?
So this is such an interesting time. And even as I look back on the quote hardship or challenges, boy, has it taken me in an interesting direction. I have met and had the opportunity to talk to, interact with, be with, hear from so many people. So it sort of speaks to, you don't know where these things are going to lead you. So I have a Harvard MBA. I went undergraduate Oberlin. I have a master's from Johns Hopkins. I've got all the props and credentials. I work, at the World Bank. I've been a C-suite executive. I've got all this stuff. So you're not expecting that in your 50s that you're going to lose your job. And when you lose your job, you know what to do. You do the informational interviews, you've got a network. A couple of things start to happen. As you get older, your network kind of thins out. People start to retire because my friendship circles, a lot of people, they do 10 years up and 10 years back. I have sort of 20 years up and 30 years back. And what has helped me, a lot of the things, even Ideas 42, as I stated, had to do with somebody, 30 years younger. But if you don't, what you find is that your peer group as you get older is starting to thin. What I didn't know at the time that I know from a really good study by the Urban Institute and ProPublica is that half of Americans lose their jobs in their 50s, and only 10% ever again get a job commensurate in pay and status with the one they left. So I say when you're at Trader Joe's, you see that older person at the cash register, they're probably not there because that's where they want to be. So the losing your job is happening to a lot of people, and they're not getting back in. If they were at 170, they're not back in at 170. They're in at 70 is the next job they get. With what's happening with AI, we are right now we're looking at a huge shakeup that is going to impact many more people. We're sort of used to when the chicken factory gets moved to Mexico and all the factory workers lose their jobs. We're not used to lawyers losing their jobs, accountants losing, architects. That's what as I get deeper into AI, that's what we're looking at now. So that happened to me, and I wrote an essay describing what it's like to land here. And that essay went viral. And people just wrote me and said, "Me too. This is happening to my sister. This is happening to my brother. Why isn't there a conversation?" Then I would meet people. They'd say, "I'm going to be in DC for a coffee. Can you meet?" And at some point, I started to have a lot of stories and a lot of people I was talking to. And my brother said to me, you should gather these all up in a book. So when I looked at the books that were out there on retirement security or long-term unemployment and older adults, all these books were sort of from think tanks. They were Brookings Institute, these big tomes, they were for policymakers. There was no book that if this happened to you, you landed here, the individual, what's your play? What do you do with the shame? What do you do with the embarrassment? What do you do? You know, your friends are inviting you out and you're, carefully looking at the menu and the person who had the 2 glasses of wine, the designer coffee and all of that now wants to split the bill evenly. And you had, soda water and a small burger. And so that's how the faking normal. People who have been good for a long time, now they're not good and they're still trying to be okay. And they don't want you to come to their house because the carpet hasn't been cleaned and there's a problem with the plumbing. I wrote about this. And there were a lot of people that this was happening to. And I wrote about it because, this is an interesting time to be getting older. And we're figuring out what does it mean. So the plus 55 communities of the past, they're playing tennis and clinking champagne glasses. It's not that. There's sort of more texture. There's a lot more to us than that sort of stereotype. But there's still this model that aging well really means how many youthful attributes can you manage to hang on to? That's what, are you still high school skinny? Can you climb Mount Kilimanjaro? Can you? And so when I was writing about what was really happening to people, I also wanted to address, it reminded me in a way of the women's movement early on, when early on, there was this, if you wanted to be a homemaker, you were sort of criticized. Why weren't you out there working? Because that is what we were fighting for. So there's something now with the whole age well movement that if you don't want a big purpose or a mission, you want to be with your grandkids and work in your garden and take a nap most afternoons, that's got to be okay too. That's got to be okay too. Climb Mount Kilimanjaro if you want to do that. That's okay too. So what I wanted to write about is, how do you have a richly textured, interesting life on a more modest income? What are the hacks that people are using to do that? What sort of value system do we need to feel okay about the changes in our bodies, the changes in energy level, kind of all of that? And how do we make our path by walking? Never before will so many of us live for so long. And we're fitter. I'm not my grandmother. I'm 71. I'm not my grandmother. I just, took my sister to the gym. I'll do Pilates tomorrow. But I'll still, I was saying to her, do I feel like doing this every day? No, I don't want to go. But I'm doing, because right now, one of my big jobs at 71 is, how do I maintain my health? How do I stay fit and strong? That is like a job. I look at it as that's a job. So had the experience of losing my job, did the essay, then the book happened that I self-published, then met somebody in a line at a conference who said to me, he was big guy, he lost his job and was upset because he had lost his job. And we sat together at the conference. He said, I have a little juice left. He's a big guy in communications. He said, I'm going to use my little bit of juice left on you. And then he got me on NPR, on PBS NewsHour, not NPR, PBS NewsHour. And then they did 3 shows on me. And then that got me a national platform. But it was just this sort of sitting next to him, us talking about what it was like, because he had been pushed out of his job as well. And we're about the same age. And we started talking about that. He really resonated. And then the PBS NewsHour, I became good friends with Solomon, who is the person who interviewed me. And he said, why'd you self-publish? And I said, because back then it was really easy to do with Amazon, and they edit it for you and help you with the cover and all of that. They don't do that anymore, but back then they did. And he said, I think you'll have a bigger platform if you were with a bigger publisher. So that then led to me meeting the people at Simon & Schuster. And they asked me to send them a manuscript, and pretty much on the spot said, well, okay, we're going to do this book. We need you to update some things in it, but then we'll do the book. And then it was so things kept happening as, I was in that place of real despair when I wrote that first essay of, I've got all this background, all of the props and credentials, my phone's not ringing, an older woman, older Black woman, kind of all of that. And so it led me on this path that led me here to you today.
Wow. That's being in the right place at the right time and having the talent to go along with
it. Absolutely. So you are really a multifaceted spokesperson for aging and for housing, certainly affordable housing. You do blogs, you do keynotes, you've got TED, the TED stage, you're a board member of a major international organization. Maybe you probably have already said all these things, but what are the key themes or points you want to convey?
I think the first one is, as older women, we are making our path by walking. That our mothers and our grandmothers in their 70s were not facing what we're facing now. And so if it's all a little confusing and crazy making, it's because it is confusing and crazy making. I think that we have the grounding of all of these years. It means that we're able to walk around a table and see things from different perspectives. We're not in the striving phase where we're, got to please a lot of people, kind of all that. Our children are mostly out of the house. And so we have an opportunity, I think, to sort of chart this new path. There are definitely pressures to put us in rocking chairs, to move us off the stage, to have us shut up. And we come from a generation, we're the women's movement, civil rights movement, LG. We're not shutting up now. Okay, we're not. So we're all elbows and knees here as they try to, get us to sit down. So I think for us to hold that energy, support other women's, our peers and contemporaries as they are wanting to do and try new things. And I say that because if you have that will serve you no matter what you're doing. If you're going back to school, if you're deciding you're going to finally divorce him, if you're, whatever you're doing, you got to be from that core place of, I know a lot of things now. And I would also say to us to continue to be curious. That is, that can serve us well. I'm deciding this year, I want to finally, I've always dabbled in French and spoke enough, but now I want to finish. Do you speak French? I want to say just yes. I don't want to say I used to, I sort of, I just want to say yes.
I'd like to go back for a minute in what you're saying and ask you, what are some of those things that we are facing that's different?
So one of the things I said earlier is we're living longer. Okay. And this is thanks to advances in science, medicine, and technology. So that living longer is a game changer. What it means is that we have children right now, half the 5-year-olds are going to live to 100. So we're living in a system that there's sort of stages where you go to school and then you work and then you retire, and everything is set up like that. So right now we should be just at the very end of life, and we could live 20 more years, and we could live 20 more years in reasonably good health. When you asked about New Age, who is it for? It's for people who are sort of late 50s into their 70s. It's for people who are in reasonably good health, meaning you may have a chronic condition or two, diabetes, something else that you're managing with medication. A lot of people are working still. Typically at our age, they're not working. Everybody I know this age, might not be working 9 to 5, W-2 style working, but they're all still consulting. They're all still speaking. I have a friend with a big, she's building a restaurant or updating a restaurant that she already owned. We are doing that move off the stage is not happening the way the culture expects a 70-plus-year-old woman to be moving off the stage. That longevity then brings into the picture all the things I said about money. You got to have a lot of money to support yourself all those years. We're living 6 years longer than our partners. So you have some years out there where you're by yourself. So I think those are the kinds of things. And the AI, I am marveling at. And I'm barely touching the surface of the capacity of this technology. And I'd really like more thought around how it can help us as older adults, either in caretaking roles, those of us who want or need to stay in the workforce, kind of all of that. But we're at this crossroads of both opportunity and challenge. So those were some of the things.
Our paths are not as clear cut as previous generations at the ages we are.
And thinking about, I was writing recently about, do our dreams expire? Do our dreams expire? Or can we resize them? And dear friend of mine, she's 80. She just turned 80 in last September. And one of her dreams was to live in Paris. So she's in the gray divorce category, divorced late, and loves Paris, wanted to live there, but now financially it's tricky maintaining a house here and there. It's expensive. And so I watched her resize her dream. So she goes to France 2 or 3 times a year for 6 weeks. that's the new vision of the dream. So we may have to resize our dreams, or maybe some we've just outgrown. You can't do it anymore. Her children were pushing back on her living there. It was too, the health care, what's going to happen, you're 80 years old, kind of all of that. And so she did it now in a way that allows her to keep some of the elements and but still be practical.
Like that.
Yeah, too.
Are you working in another book?
The short answer is no. I think like book writing is like childbirth. When you're in it, it's like, I never do this. Why'd I do this? But, so I may have more to say. I'm sort of finding, so I'm not going to say never. I'm saying no for now.
You've many platforms to get your messages out there. So please keep doing that.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Yes.
Wonderful. And listeners, we'd like to see more of you at our monthly online programs. Make your voice heard as together we change the conversation about women aging. And visit Aging Reimagined Circle at womenover70.com. Thank you for listening.